Why do managed services providers guard their pricing? So that's an interesting question. Rebecca, what do you think about that? Why do you think people online, and why do managed services don't want to put their stuff out there for others?
Well, the dirty little secret is that we essentially all charge the same cost, give or take. Most people follow a per seat method when it comes to charging for managed services. But the big differentiator with managed services is how is the organization structured? There's, traditionally 4 types of providers out there. You've got the trunk slammers, and trunk slammers are really like the 2 to 4 people organizations that have no process. They're cloud-based, so you'll run into them. They'll say, yeah, we can put you in a cloud service. We can put you on Office 365. We can handle the cloud applications. But what they really lack is the experience to handle organizations. So whether it's their service team doesn't know how to mitigate risks that may pop up. Like right now, we've got Log4j going on, which is a huge vulnerability that affects everybody. And they lack the experience to tackle those problems and mitigate those type of risks. The next type of managed service provider you'll come across is the value MSP. They're typically 8 to 15 people. Their pricing model seems great because you either have break fix or you have an hourly model. So on an as needed basis, there's no ability for them to track, constant and persistent problems within your environment. And so that particular model doesn't necessarily work, especially when it comes to larger organizations. And again, going back to, some of the vulnerabilities, we lack checks and balances. So you may have this technician over here working on one thing, another technician over here working on another, and there's no continuity within that. The third one that we have is going to be what we call the bolt-on MSPs. These are sales-driven organizations. They are what you would see like a printer vendor. That's the most common one that I've come across. And you have a huge print organization that leases and maintains printers, and then they have the managed service component. And so they're really a sales-driven organization. And the problem that we run into when we come across that is that there's no main person that you can contact. They don't consult you technology-wise. They don't understand things like security or business continuity, how outages impact your business. And so they take a step back from being that strategic partner that you need as a business. And it becomes more of a sales-driven platform and plan instead of being a business partner with you. And then the fourth category is what we call the mature managed service provider. Those are typically organizations that are 20 to 25 people or more. They have, over 10 years experience in managed services. They are, their core business is service. It's service and business consulting when it comes to technology. Everybody provides, each one of these categories, we all provide IT, and we all do at least a decent job. Otherwise, you take your business elsewhere. But the thing that sets apart mature organizations compared to immature organizations or managed service providers is how we help you technology plan. And so there's different categories and different value with the type of provider that you choose. And we hope you choose a mature organization. So
well, you can you can choose, right? Like, I think it's interesting when you talk about that there are these different levels that you have. And I know that not every, but most managed services providers have gone through some sort of evolution, right? Most companies don't start out like they pop out with 25 employees and a bunch of, highly developed processes, right? There are a few stages that companies have to go through. And I think it's important to know when you're looking for a managed services provider and why their pricing isn't always published, is that each one of these organizations, these types of organizations, may not have the maturity to actually identify what their pricing models look like, right? Like if they're very small, they may not understand what their gross profitability needs to be in order to maintain their clients and to keep skilled labor on their staff, right? In order to support the services that they're selling to their market. And I think it's important for people to remember that some of these smaller organizations, they don't have a lot of the checks and balances in place, and so their pricing might be competitively far less. But there's a risk inherent with that, right? And they always say, "What you get what you pay for." Now, I'm not an advocate of overpaying, right? I think that's something everybody needs to be aware of. But to your point, Rebecca, I think in the market we see that most organizations, most more mature service organizations in technology, have kind of a range, right? And that range is for sometimes it's per person, sometimes it's per computer, sometimes it's per physical location. So those things come together, and managed service providers often don't kind of publish those rates because they're not always providing the same types of service to each one of the clients that they're working with. So they could be a base level type of service without security on it. They could be a smaller organization and not have the overhead, so their pricing is a little different and kind of lower. And so a lot of people kind of keep that to themselves, and they don't really bring it forward until they wind up engaging with the client. And for some of the less mature organizations, they're not going to do a bunch of due diligence up front in order to understand what the risk is to them as an organization and where they should provide some guidance to the client. Some of those less mature organizations are simply looking to make a sale, which for a small business, if you're in a kind of a tight budget for your IT services, they may be a good fit to get you, by. We typically see that organizations move to us and more mature MSPs when they hit 20, 25 people. And then they kind of outgrow that provider.